I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me. I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah.
All right, we are live. What is up? What is up? Happy Wednesday. Welcome out to Look Behind the Curtain with Chris. We are currently in season 2 and we are rolling through the episodes. We are one episode away from reaching season 2's number, and I would love your input. Would you like us to keep going? Would you like season 2 to be longer than season 1 originally was? Or would you prefer we take a break and move into season 3? Would love your input on it, and we'll definitely take what you say inside the comments in the chat very heavily in our decision, because of course we don't do this for us, we do this for you. The whole purpose of this show, ultimately at the end of the day, is to share the conversations I would normally have with amazing people who have very inspiring stories. Instead of keeping it to myself, I share it with you. And so I love that I'm able to do that. I love that I'm able to share these amazing people with you. However, again, the whole show is for you. So let us know what you're thinking. Go ahead, comment in the comments below what you prefer. And so with all that being said, let's dive into today's episode. I'm really excited. This is actually one of the first times that I'm going to be talking to somebody that I don't know very well, like in depth, don't really know much about them. However, as you guys know, I'm not the only founder. There's a co next to founder here, right? And so the other half of the OVF company is a gentleman named Liam Weisner, for those of you guys who may be new and tuning in for the first time. And this is a gentleman from his past, from his experience, that I'm really excited to actually chat with. I chatted with him a little bit earlier, and just through sharing the message and getting to chat with him, I was like, man, we got to get you on the show. We got to share your story. And so really excited to share him with you guys here today. But before we dive into that, we always have a little bit of housekeeping. And what is up, brother? Good to see you. Sweet. Enjoy that family time, brother. You know how important that balance is. And so let's dive into some housekeeping. First off, welcome. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you guys here tonight. Going to be diving into some really awesome topics. As you can see, the gentleman I'm going to be chatting with has transitioned from the military to civilian life and now to entrepreneurship, and has been doing some really amazing things there. So can't wait to share that with you. And if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, definitely go ahead and do that. We grew by over 100 subscribers in the last 2 weeks. So guys, thank you so much for all your support. Thank you so much for your dedication. It means the world to me. And I really just want to keep producing more of this amazing content for you guys. So really appreciate it. Also, this show would not exist without our sponsor, which is, it's always mirrored in the camera. So I gotta get over here. OVF, which is Operation Veteran Freedom, which, like I mentioned earlier, myself and Liam Weisner founded this company almost 2 years ago. We're going on, a little over a year, like going on to 2 years. And, when we first got together, we had this vision of what would life be like if a veteran had all the support, all the resources, all the knowledge that we do right now when they first got out of the service. What would be different in their life if they were actually set up for success once they were discharged? And so the OVF was founded because we wanted to be the mentors, we wanted to be the coaches, to be the guides that we wish we had when we first got out. And so today's sponsor, as always, is OVF. And if you are a veteran, anybody who has served, whether it's first responder, EMT, law enforcement, doesn't matter. If you've served this country, we want to support you. And so you can join Operation Veteran Freedom's free Facebook group, and you can download a lot of our resources, including our free book, trainings, all for free, and start using those to absolutely explode your life. And so without further ado, guys, I'm really excited to bring today's guest on. Like I mentioned earlier, I have not really known this gentleman for any period of time. He is one of Liam's friends and someone who came highly recommended to bring onto the show. He is much younger, as young as I wish I was when I first figured out entrepreneurship and what that could do for me. And so I'm really excited to dive into his story here today. If you missed a little bit about the post, he's 24 years old. He's originally from Texas. He's with his high school sweetheart now for going on 6 years, and he is so fortunate to be able to run a business with her which is all about cleaning, and I cannot wait to dive into that. So, guys, please help me bring to the call Mr. Khalil Wright. What's up, brother?
What's going on, boss?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. It seems like there might be a bit of an echo. Do you also have the YouTube on in the background as well?
I don't. I have StreamYard pulled up. Do I need to close that out?
No, no, definitely keep StreamYard pulled up. I just get a little bit of an echo. Sometimes it's just connection. So I just wanted to make sure. I've definitely had, the YouTube channel on in the background and make sure it was streaming live, and then it does this echo thing. So I just wanted to make sure.
Gotcha. It might just be
Anyway,
my connection, and I apologize on that front.
yeah, it's all good. It's all good. No worries. We're still gonna have an awesome time and get to chat a little bit. And so, first off, just thank you so much for taking some time and jumping on the show last minute like you did. I really do appreciate that. I'm excited to dive into your story, man. And mostly, Liam's talked you up quite a bit to me, and anybody who Liam tells me is a stand-up person who we should talk to. That goes a long way with me, Liam. I trust him with my life, and so I definitely am really excited to chat with you here today. Also, dude, uh, your age blows me away. I wish more young entrepreneurs, more young people getting out of the military do what you're doing right now. So, really excited to dive in. Before we do chat a little bit about your success here today, let's kind of just hear a little about your backstory. Where do you come from? What was your childhood like? And ultimately up to you joining the military.
Okay, yeah. So, like we've said before, my name's Khalil Wright. 24 years old. I was born in Fort Hood originally, so that should entail that my parents were prior service. So that's kind of that kind of segues to how I got into the military. We'll jump onto that a little bit later. But yeah, I've got a brother and a sister. My sister's name is Aaliyah. She just graduated college. She also has a son. I have a brother named Caleb. He's currently in the Air Force. So that was another pillar that helped me feel more comfortable about joining the military. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, fire away. Any questions to kind of help lead me into more so what
Yeah,
you want to know?
absolutely. Got you, brother. And so, when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was younger, honestly, I wanted to play professional basketball. I'm a big sports guy. I think the player that made me fall in love with basketball was Vince Carter. And
Mm,
I was pretty young. I want to say my dad had got me like NBA Live 2004. So at the time, I was like, I don't know, 6 years old, something like that. And like I said, I just kind of fell in love with Vince Carter and Kobe Bryant. Those are my two favorite players growing up, and those were the two guys that really made me want to play basketball growing up. But as I got older, once I played basketball a little bit. I played basketball in middle school, going into high school. Once I got to high school, I kind of didn't take it as serious, so I didn't play as much. But yeah, that was what I wanted to do growing up. I wanted to be a basketball player.
that's awesome. I've had several other people on the show who it was baseball growing up or was some other sport that ultimately that was their focus, that was their discipline, that's where they learned who they were, how to be accountable, how to actually show up for someone bigger than a team. So I think that's really cool that you bring that up. What ultimately broke that dream for you? What ultimately made you go a different path?
Um, Honestly, I could just say, looking back, I'll say it was myself more so than any actually determining factor. You know what I'm saying? It was more so I just kind of lost the motivation, told myself, oh, well, this happened. So that means this, which means I can't play basketball. None of those things were necessarily true looking back at it. But to dive a little bit more into it. So the situation was I was 5'8" in eighth grade, so that kind of had me as more of a big, more so. But then going into high school, I stopped growing,
Mm,
so I was developing these big man skills, but I wasn't as tall as a big man would be going into high school. So it kind of was like a transition thing. My skills didn't transition as well, and that's where ultimately the lack of motivation and things of that sort kind of started to show itself.
Yeah. No, that's yeah, makes sense. So ultimately, I mean, you already mentioned it. You joined the military, and heavy influence from your upbringing. You also have a brother who served, so it's it comes from generations. What what was one of the biggest takeaways you had from your time in service?
One of my biggest takeaways, that's a great question. One of my biggest takeaways was honestly how important it is to be able to communicate with people. Because
Mm,
ultimately, I'll say that was the biggest reason why I wanted to get out at the time of me wanting to get out was just because I felt like my chain of command, I didn't really have anyone to depend on. And I
mm,
mean, of course, that's not me saying they didn't try, but as far they didn't know how to communicate with me, and that's not their fault. Like I said, the older I get, I am the age now that my ncos were when, you know what I'm saying, I was a private. So looking back, I understand the challenges that it would be, especially trying to learn different ways to communicate when you only know your way, or things like that. But I'll say that because I felt like I wasn't the communication wasn't there, it was something that I learned to get better at myself. If
mm.
people can't communicate with me, then I need to learn how to communicate better with them, because ultimately all I want is the message to get across. You see what I'm saying?
No,
So
yeah, 100%.
yeah, my biggest takeaway was learning how to communicate with people, just because it gets better results. I'm really big on efficiency and getting results, and I know how important communication is to getting results done efficiently.
Yeah, 100%. Liam said to me that you and I are going to be instant kindred spirits, and listening to you talk, it makes a lot of sense. We haven't really chatted a bunch about my history, so I'll give you this little brief piece.
For
Back
sure.
in 2016, I was over in Afghanistan, and was in an IED, Humvee IED, and I got a TBI, 3-inch scar on the front right of my brain. And doctors told me when I started having seizures and they figured out what was going on and they finally diagnosed me, they told me that I would have trouble communicating, to controlling emotion, to remembering things. They told me all this stuff, and I dove really, like, I accepted that for almost a decade and felt destructive. There's a long story there. But when I finally decided to make myself better, one of the things that I dove into, and I mean like a pit bull playing with its toy, I'm not letting go, right? And so it was communication, because the quality of your communication will dictate the quality of your life. If you cannot
Absolutely.
communicate and ask the right questions, you're going to be stuck and you're going to be hurt. It's going to be worse for you. And so I love that you brought that up, because literally communication is the key to everything. Every conversation
Everything.
anyone has is just a sales conversation. It's, can I sell you on my idea? Do I believe what you're saying to me? It's just a transaction. And when we stop, like when we really look at it, if you can communicate properly, there's something you can't do. So I love that you brought that up. And so you join the military. What happens when you first get out? And I think a more specific question might be, what was the number one thing that you, obstacle, if you will, that you had to overcome when you first got out of the military?
Honestly, this may sound pretty simple, but it was a pretty big obstacle. It was having my freedom back. Honestly, it was trying to figure out what to do with myself, right? It's like, okay, well, I've gotten so used to my entire day being scheduled for me. All I have to do is show up and, do whatever. Now it's like, okay, well, what do I want to do today? I can do whatever I want today. I can go look for a job. I can do nothing all day. I can do whatever. So it was just realizing how much freedom I had given up, and then realizing how much freedom I ultimately had being out.
Yeah, definitely a very common issue with a lot of people that we work with, is that you come from such a structured environment. You wake up at 4, do PT, have chow, be at first formation, do your like. It's so structured, right? Boom, 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 boom. That the minute you get out, it's like I find it to be very similar, and maybe you might as well, being an entrepreneur, to when someone goes from a job to entrepreneurship. It's like, okay, well, I used to have a boss or a
Yep.
manager or someone telling me when I had to clock in, when
Yep.
I had to clock out, when these things were due, what my projects were, what I had to be working on. And then you move to entrepreneurship and it's like, I can show up when I want. I can show up in
Hmm.
my pajamas. Like it's so different. And I find that a lot of people fail because they love the idea of freedom, but they have not taken the time to get the clarity of the structure and the accountability it takes to have that freedom. What are your takes on that?
I think that's a really good take. I think yeah, there's a lot of people, and I can even speak for them for myself in some cases that when I got out, there was a lot of blaming that I did versus self-reflection and really you know taking appreciation for all the things that the military actually did teach me.
Mhm.
Um, because full moment of disclosure, I got out, I got discharged because, like I said, I was going through a lot. Being a young soldier, being in Fort Hood. For anyone who knows Fort Hood, we know what it's like to go through Fort Hood, the lack of leadership, and just how there's too many soldiers for to be accountable for. So what that can lead to, but none of that, no excuses. I got discharged for smoking weed while being a soldier, but all that to say, there was a lot of blaming that I did myself that
Mhm.
led to a lot of stunting in my development, right? Like these realizations that I have at 24, I could have realized at even 20, 21, or whatever the age was when I initially got out. But it was a lot of, like I said, blaming and not wanting to be accountable for my actions and the things that led me to ultimately be where I was. And I couldn't propel myself and get to the next level, especially being entrepreneurship, until I had admitted to those things and kind of righted my wrongs internally. You know what I mean? Came to realize, okay, well, yeah, like I blew that opportunity to be in the military, but at the same time, when one door closes, another one opens. So it was just a matter from there of waiting on my next opportunity and being ready for it, whatever it may be. Because it got to a point where I was so young, and honestly, I feel like I'm a type of person that can do anything. Right? It's just a matter of what will I settle down and focus on. And so it was a matter, like I said, it was a matter of me just being ready mentally for whatever opportunity may come, because looking back, I can admit, I going into the military, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, right? Like I had family members that were in the military, my brother was in the military, things like that. But until like I actually was in the military, I didn't, understand or take it seriously. So that was an opportunity that I had that I blew. But again, when one door
Yeah.
closes, another one opens.
No, yeah, and I can't wait to dive into what that next opportunity was for you. But I want to touch on something because your courage and your honesty right now, the integrity you just had is phenomenal. So many soldiers that I talk to behind the scenes who don't want to share the full story, and I would never do that to them, have gone through something very similar to you, myself included. I'll put my own story out there because I don't, if you judge me, that's on you, not on me. But when I popped top while I was still in service,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't for weed; it was for ecstasy. And the full story, I'll make it really short. Right before I deployed, I decided that at 18 years old, I would live a little bit before ultimately I could die. And so I went out and I arranged for this crazy weekend, and I lived it. I had a great time. No, I mean, honestly, I had a phenomenal weekend. It was a blast. But unfortunately, I was not allowed to do what I did. Right. And looking back as a 34-year-old, not a good decision. Shouldn't have done it. But at that point in my life, at 18 years old, it was the right decision for me. Ultimately, my lieutenant colonel, I popped hot, got in trouble, lost my rank, got field grade Article 15, lost my rank, got all the penalties you would normally get.
Mm-hmm.
Lieutenant Colonel looked at me, knew me from the training, knew me from all the things that we've gone through, and said, "We're not going to discharge you. Do you want to stay in?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to stay in." And so he said, "Good. You're going to pay for this problem. You're going to pay for what you did, but you're going to stay in. Deploy us. We go overseas. Everything's working out. I'm making my rank back, working great." Unfortunately, Lieutenant Colonel Fenty passes away, a helicopter accident on May 5th. And so we get a new regime. Lieutenant Colonel Howard comes in, and now all of a sudden, I'm no longer anybody worthwhile, right? And so I'm literally fighting an uphill battle those last couple of months, and then ultimately I get injured, I get hurt, I get sent to Walter Reed. I go through all this rehabilitation. They're getting ready to medically discharge me from the military, and my unit steps back in, and they're like, "Oh no. It hasn't been a full year since this Article 15. And so instead of a medical discharge, we're going to give you it's honorable, but it's only general. It's going to be general honorable conditions because you did do the right thing afterwards, but you still made that mistake." And so they hit me with it 11 months later. As I'm leaving the service, I had died 4 months before that, literally flatline on life support for over a week. And that's how they did me, dude. And so many stories out there. I've talked to many other veterans who've gone something very similar, and it's always, to me, very empowering. And I love the integrity behind a soldier who is willing to not hide and actually share their true story and share what really went down, right? Because I don't believe that there are shitbirds out there, right? There are absolute, you're foobarred, we can't do anything about you. But for the majority of us, we're 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids who are trying to figure ourselves out, and we have all this stuff. And what I loved about Lieutenant Colonel Fenty is he realized that. He said, "You guys are young, you're dumb, you wanted to live a little bit." And he even asked us, "Why do we do it?" And we told him straight out, like, I can die before I see my 19th birthday. I wanted to say I did something crazy, right? And so we did the whole thing. Anyway, I want to hear more about you. I want to hear more about, but I wanted to honor that, man. I wanted to take a second to honor that because it's rare. So many people try to hide behind their accomplishments and try to make themselves into a bigger hero than they are. But it's the people who are real that I respect. And so thank you. And so let's move on past the military. What was the next step for you? You got out, there was no more structure. You had to figure it out for yourself. What was the next step for you?
Yeah, so the next step was I moved back in with my mom. She was gracious enough to allow me to come back. And it was essentially minimum wage job after minimum wage job after minimum wage job. I think I started working for like a lawn care company. That didn't work out. Then I moved to FedEx. That was cool for a while. That didn't work out. And then I wound it up at this company called KBS, which essentially is a janitorial staff. And they clean the Amazon warehouses out here where I'm at. And so I was working there for, I want to say, somewhere around like 8 months. I was there for a pretty good minute. I got in with the manager there while I was working, and I kind of picked his brain a little bit about like the company in general, as far as how it became, like how they got the opportunity to clean for Amazon. And it's funny because I was doing this with no intent of, retaining this information or using it to start my own cleaning company. Like at the time, this was just me getting cool with the manager and we need something to talk about. So I was just talking to him about that. But it's funny how that ended up working out, because while I was working at KBS, so here's the story. This is how Safe Cleaning Solutions got started. So my girlfriend has a family friend named Marcus Greer. He owns Safe Pest Solutions, our sister company. So he kept in contact with us. We would talk to him periodically, just, kind of updating him on how our life is and, things like that. And he essentially was asked so many times, because he's in so many people's houses doing pest control, if he knew anyone who did house cleaning. And so he gave us the opportunity. He sat us down. He was like, "Hey, I'm opening Safe Cleaning Solutions, a cleaning company. You guys can run it. I will pay for all the LLCs, the upfront costs. I'll even give y'all some equipment to start, but this is y'all's." And so I quit my job within 2 days because I totally understood what entrepreneurship was. Not totally as in I understood what I'm in now, but I knew what it meant to go from working for someone to being your own boss essentially. And so like I said, I quit my job within 2 days. Um, and my girlfriend, she was working for like another month or so at her job to, kind of make sure we could still pay for bills and things as we were still figuring out the beginning of everything. But after that, it was we hit the ground running, and we've been up and running and still trying to figure all this out ever since February of last year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So in business, a little over a year,
Yeah.
and doing really. How you guys doing? How is business?
We're doing great. We're doing great. We've gotten to the point where the work is enough and consistent enough to where we need help. So we actually have one employee right now, and that's great. It's great,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, just to touch on that for 2 seconds, of course, working for yourself and setting your own value, like that's one thing. But then to have residual income come in, right? Like without you having to work for it, it's a whole nother feeling. Like, it's to me, it's a whole nother feeling. But yeah, we're doing great. The biz, we're doing great. We are growing all the time. We're busy all the time, so that's a good thing. I'm tired all
Yeah.
the time, so that's a good thing.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's all right being exhausted when you're building your own dream. I love that. Let me ask you. It's a two-piece question. First
Okay.
off, I want to hear what was the biggest obstacle you faced switching into entrepreneurship?
The biggest obstacle. I will say for me, and this is just me personally, being a young black man starting his own cleaning company in Mississippi, it was getting in houses. It was being taken seriously. It was the, are these people gonna let me in their house, right? Because at
Yeah.
the time, also, I had dreads, and they were like crazy colors. I was dyeing them like all the time. So it was, are these people gonna let me in their house? To me, that was my biggest hurdle. It wasn't as much of an obstacle as I thought it was going to be, so that's always good.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I would just say getting the work, right? Like getting the work, like actually putting yourself out there and
Mm.
marketing and getting people to book you, right? I would say that was the biggest hurdle because, like I said, we're busy now, right? People are calling us every day while they're at work, while we have walkthroughs to do every day after work. But it wasn't like that at first. It was a point in time where we had 2 houses a week. You know what I'm saying? So that was a big hurdle to put ourselves out there, even though we weren't getting responses, just continuing to put ourselves out there and continue to, regardless, keep the faith that it's gonna work as long as you're doing everything you need to do. Because it's easy, it's way easier said than done, because sometimes you don't get results, you don't get like any instant gratification. Sometimes it'll look the exact same way for weeks, months, right? Like for a while, and you won't see like any hope. There's no reason for you to keep going, it'll look like. But you just got to know that that's not how it works. Like, if you do the work, it's gonna get returned to you somehow. So it was really trying to battle with that and make it work, because there were plenty of times where it was like, okay, it's cool to be an entrepreneur, but I was making more money when somebody
Mhm.
was paying me. But it's battling through that, right? It's getting past that to the point to where now I'm making more money than I ever made working for anybody.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. And I got to say, I really appreciate that perspective because it's one I don't have. And so, like, just being a white dude, I don't have that same perspective. And so I appreciate you sharing that because, that's not something I've encountered or even thought about. And so I'm sure many of the viewers too can appreciate that different perspective, that different lens to look through when it comes to entrepreneurship and how the whole human race really approaches that, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. Another thing that I want to touch on with you, and we're running out of our time. It goes by so fast. I always I'm gonna start extending the time on these things.
Yeah.
You know, entrepreneurship's it's taken off for you. It's been like the glove you always wanted, always needed, right, to put on the hand. It's perfect. And so, what has been the biggest takeaway, like the biggest thing that entrepreneurship has done for you in your life since starting?
Giving me confidence, right? Like it's
Mm.
changed my whole perspective. You know, growing up in the family that I did, there are no entrepreneurs in my family, that I know of at least. Um, and it gave me confidence, right? Like everyone, and this is not talking down on anyone when I frame it this way, but this is just my perspective on it. Everyone essentially in my family works for whatever someone tells them they're worth, right?
Mm.
I'm in a situation where I don't work unless I feel like it's worth it. And to be able to gauge that, what that number is, what that looks like, it again gives me so much confidence because it's like, okay, wow, like these people are willing to pay me, X amount of money or X amount of money, right? Like that in itself is just giving me confidence to just put more value on myself, not just when it comes to, the business, but even in life, right? Like value myself more.
Awesome. That is so great to hear. And I truly believe, myself included, that level of confidence is something that we lose after our time in service. We get out, and again, we lose that structure. We lose that, like, what am I supposed to be doing? And so our confidence dwindles. Like, all right, well, I don't, I don't know if I would even be good at that. I've been doing this for so long, and
Yeah.
so it's awesome that's what you found. I know through putting myself on camera like I do, I found my confidence, and I realized it wasn't nearly as scary as I once said it was to myself. So thank you
Absolutely.
for sharing that. I just want to say, Khalil, thank you so much, for jumping on last minute, being so open, courageous, and vulnerable, sharing your story, sharing who you are. I'm inspired by you, and I can't wait to have you back on again. I'm sure this is not the last of our conversations, even off
Not at
camera.
all.
And just, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I really appreciate you having me. I'm sorry I was, a little tardy, but I appreciate you having me. This was great. This is my first time doing anything like this. This is pretty cool. I love to be able to, open up not just in front of people that I've only known for a couple days, but people that I don't even know are going to be watching this, right? I love to just be able to give my perspective on things and, see what it does. Hope that I can add value or add perspective to people's lives. I appreciate the opportunity to even do this.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. And so, for everybody else out there watching, thank you guys so much for being here. This wraps up today's episode. As always, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you found value in today's episode and had an aha moment, something really jumped out to you, something that really stood out to you, go ahead and comment that below so that we can know what resonated with you. We can bring more content related to that to you. And just thank you guys so much for being here. And we'll see you same time next week. Have a good one. Peace.